there is no other way to get over this season than to go through it, right? So let's embrace it. Don't feel that midlife is a bad word. Age is just a number. And yes, it comes with certain changes in our lives. The women that we were at 28 built this life. We have to remember that. The women that we are now, we get to decide what stays and what goes. We're evolving into our next season, a new season in midlife where our energy changes. We don't want to sacrifice our peace for other people's approval. We're not going to say yes when our body is screaming, heck freaking no. And instead of seeing that as a weakness, what if it's refinement, right? What if it's alignment? We are refining our lives. We are setting boundaries. We are setting goals that align with where we are right now. Welcome back, friends, to another episode of Unleash Your Light with Luz. Today, I am solo, and I want to discuss something that I believe many women at midlife over 40 may be going through. There's something that happens in midlife that no one really prepares us for. It's subtle at first, right? The confidence we once had feels maybe a little shaky, or maybe you feel like you've lost your confidence completely. The goals you once chased don't seem to fit with the life you now dream of. The energy you used to rely on feels different. You know that you have limited energy, and once that time of day comes, it's a wrap, friend. I feel you. And you start asking yourself questions that you've never asked before. What am I doing with my life? Is this still what I want? Or, I got what I worked so hard for, but why do I feel like something is missing now? Why don't I feel like myself? And underneath all of that, there can be this quiet fear. And for many of us, it might be very hard to even say out loud. The question that we ask ourselves is this the beginning of the end? Let's take a breath. Today, I want to tell you something that I truly believe in, especially because I've asked myself all of these questions and have felt that shift that rocked my world, right? It feels like that, like your world is just being completely rocked. And this is it. Midlife is not the beginning of the end. It is the beginning of another you, a new season, a new adventure, a pivot to another level that you will love. Trust me. The thing is that there's a confidence shift that no one talks about when we arrive in our 40s. At first, this shift doesn't feel like a good one, right? Because, we're trying to understand certain things, but ultimately it is. In our 20s and our 30s, we were building. We were proving that we were capable, proving that we were smart enough, proving that we could handle motherhood, careers, relationship, all of it. There was, adrenaline in that season. There was this ambition. There was something to chase. But midlife feels so different. Now, we're not trying to prove. We're trying to understand our life better because we see things differently. It's kind of like a veil has been lifted. I don't know about you, but that's how I felt. That's how I experienced it. And that shift can make us feel a loss of confidence. Initially, we actually, we celebrate this milestone. We celebrate our 40th birthday. We have parties. Whatever it is, however you celebrate, we celebrate and you're like, yes, I'm ready. But as time passes, things start changing, right? We start to question ourselves more. We overthink more. We hesitate more. And if we're being honest, our bodies and our declining hormones don't help. So, between our hormone shifts, energy shifts, sleep shifts, the way we feel in our own skin changes, right? Everything starts to change. It can feel like the foundation right under us is being moved without our permission. But here's what I want you to think about. What if this isn't a loss of confidence? What if it's an awakening of consciousness? Now, stick with me. We become more aware of our life, of the time that we've had and what we have left, but not necessarily we're thinking about what we have left in a bad way. It's more of I want to live my life to the fullest type of way. And with that, we also start to understand ourselves more deeply. I've always considered myself a pretty confident person. Yes, I've had my doubts and I have my struggles. I've had my struggles about certain things too, but overall, I knew that I could achieve great things, that I was smart, and that I could overcome anything I set my mind on. When I turned 40, like I mentioned before, I found myself in a good place. I celebrated. I was very proud of myself. I had two beautiful daughters. I was happily married with a great career and in pretty good shape. Then the pandemic hit. And now in hindsight, I love how everything starts with then the pandemic hit. I feel like I've spoken to so many people lately, and that's always like a pivotal moment, right? A moment of change. So, like I was saying, I digress. The pandemic hit, and looking now in hindsight, I realized that the stress that I was under really affected my health and my hormones in ways I could have never imagined. At some point, I entered perimenopause between, the pandemic and I want to say like a couple of years ago. And I started to have, gut issues, lots of anxiety and weight gain. Having been a health and wellness coach for a while, I took care of most of my issues, meaning that I went to the doctor, I did the research that I needed to do to make sure that nothing else was wrong. And, also I was struggling with my weight. I still do, to be honest. But that's okay. It's part of the process, right? But seeing how my body was changing no matter what I did, and how perimenopause was affecting me with so much anxiety, to the point that I just, I didn't have that anxiety before. And the brain fog, oh my gosh, like my confidence took such a huge toll for a really long time because of these issues. And that just I started questioning myself. I started realizing, asking myself if I was even the same person anymore, if I could be able to do the things that I used to do. I mean, I used to feel like the Energizer Bunny, and now I don't. I have very limited energy, and I know at what time is my cutoff. And it is what it is, right? To be completely honest with you, it has been probably the hardest season of my life. And I'm not exaggerating. I am still navigating perimenopause, but in the past couple of years, I've taken steps to improve my health, my mind, and my body. One of those things is taking hormone replacement therapy, which has almost completely eliminated my brain fog. As a high performing woman, that is the worst thing because, I write for a living. That's what I do on a day to day basis. And even putting this podcast together, producing this podcast and hosting it, it is challenging at times. Sometimes it takes me forever to write like my points and my scripts and things like that. And for the most part, I do have to write a script because I need to have the things in front of me so that I don't forget. So I continue to work on other areas, and it has not been easy, but I've also gained another level of motivation and confidence that I didn't have before. So my point is that changes in midlife aren't necessarily a breakdown or that you're broken or no longer useful. I know that that sounds a little bit crazy to say that, to feel that we may not feel useful, but that's really how sometimes I have felt. And I know in talking with other friends, they feel the same way. I think one of the hardest parts of midlife is realizing that what once motivated us doesn't anymore, right? Like if you are a high achieving, high performing woman that has a very demanding career, it's like the titles, the applause, the external validation no longer do it for us, right? They don't hit the same. And that can be really scary because for a very long time that kind of defined us, right? Because if you're not chasing what you used to chase, then who are you? But what if midlife isn't an identity crisis, right? What if it's an identity recalibration? And I love that. Also, the word midlife, I think people feel a certain way about that. I actually have started to really embrace it because it is just the season that I'm in. So I want to embrace it. I want to enjoy this season that I'm in. there is no other way to get over this season than to go through it, right? So let's embrace it. Don't feel that midlife is a bad word, or that means that you're old or anything like that. Like, I have friends that are 60 years old and they look incredible. And I'm always like, I want to look like that when I'm 60. Okay. So age is just a number. And yes, it comes with certain changes in our lives. But again, it is not a crisis. It is a recalibration of our lives. And, the women that we were at 28 built this life. We have to remember that. The women, that we are now, we get to decide what stays and what goes. It may feel at first like we're faced with lots of instability, but we can't look at it that way. Instead of thinking that, think of it as a time of evolution. We're evolving into our next season, a new season in midlife where our energy changes. We're no longer going to be operating on hustle alone anymore. We don't want to sacrifice our peace for other people's approval. We're not going to say yes when our body is screaming, heck freaking no. And instead of seeing that as a weakness, what if it's refinement, right? What if it's alignment? We are refining our lives. We are setting boundaries. We are setting goals that align with where we are right now. And we are setting our standards too, because the standards may change a little bit, but that doesn't mean that they're good or bad. So, I've started to look at life so differently than when I was in my 20s and 30s, and, realize that certain things I thought were important then are so insignificant now. One of the things that I treasure the most now is my close knit friendships and like sisterhood. Because for me, it is important to surround myself with women who love me for who I am, who reach out to me and check on me and make sure that I am good as I do the same for them, and as someone who is like the strong one, right? Like in my family, I'm always the one that people call on for whatever, doesn't matter, emotional support, just like handling business, it's hard because people don't reach out and say, hey, are you okay? How are you doing? It's always like, hey, can you help me this? Can you help me with that? That's another thing. When we are in midlife, we are not only raising our kids, we are also taking care of our parents. And, in my case, particularly, my parents, thank God, are very healthy overall, but they have their issues and they're older, they're in their 70s. So I also need to take care of them to a certain extent, right? So this is a very particular season in our life and it's very challenging. I still have goals, but they're not to buy nice things, although those things are great, but it is more for experiences and to leave my daughters a legacy and create generational wealth. Like those are the things that really fire me up more than buying like brand name stuff that I just don't really care for. If you're in midlife and feel a little untethered, like the woman you used to be doesn't quite fit anymore, but the woman you're becoming isn't fully clear yet, I created something especially for you. It's called the Clarity Compass, and this is a simple but powerful tool to help you reconnect with who you are now, what you actually want in this season, and where you're being called next. Because midlife isn't about starting over, it's about realigning. You can download the Clarity Compass today. The link is in the show notes, and together we can start finding your direction today. Are you a business owner, female entrepreneur, and CEO? Do you feel buried in administrative tasks and not working in your zone of genius? Well, if that's you, friend, then listen up. I was there too, but thanks to VY Executive Support, I've handed off all the administrative tasks of my business that are still very important, of course, to a virtual assistant so that I can focus on the things of my business that only I can do and that bring me joy and money. Things like inbox and calendar management, follow-up scheduling, travel coordination, and behind-the-scenes operations are all handled with discretion and proactive attention to detail. The goal is simple: fewer drop balls, more capacity, and a business that feels calm again. If you're ready for right-hand support, check the show notes and connect with Veronica at VY Executive Support. Oh, and don't forget to tell her Luz from Unleash Your Light sent you. And then there's also something else that we don't talk about enough, that midlife can bring a quiet fear of invisibility. I certainly felt this, right? We live in a culture that celebrates youth. So when our bodies change, when brain fog hits, when anxiety shows up in ways it never did before, it can shake us, not just physically, but emotionally. You start questioning your relevance, your sharpness, your edge. And especially if you're working in a high-paced environment, you feel like you're struggling with all these things behind closed doors, but you have to like be on point, right? Because here are the men that are not having these issues, right? And then it's like, oh, you're getting old or you're just not on point anymore. But here's what I've realized: we're not disappearing. We care less about performing and more about alignment and aligning ourselves with the things that we care about. Granted, if we are in a job, obviously it is important for us to perform. So I'm not necessarily talking about that. I'm talking about our life, the things that we do have control over, right? And we're thinking less about being impressive and more about being authentic to ourselves and to our new season. Yes, sometimes we still worry about what people think. We worry about aging, we worry about, starting something new at this age. But the difference now is that we know ourselves better. And when we know ourselves better, even in doubt, we know our values. Even when we are feeling insecure, we know what really matters. And even when we feel fear, we know what's aligned. And that, my friends, is self awareness. That is our power. So remember that. So to kind of wrap it up, like midlife isn't about trying to get back to who you were. It is about intentionally becoming who you are now. Our goals shift. It becomes less about things and more about experiences, less about climbing that corporate ladder and more about legacy. It's less about, proving and more about our own peace, right? Maintaining that peace that we so need. And if you've been doubting yourself lately, friends, I need you to hear this. Please hear me out, because I think that a lot of us suffer quietly. And this is why I wanted to do this episode, because we're just kind of going through the motions, and we start changing the way that we speak to ourselves, that we say things that we think, right, about ourselves, about our ability, about our life, because it's part hormonal, and it's also part, just like the struggles that we are going through in this season, right? But I want you to hear me out, and I want you to write this down somewhere if you feel like you need to. And it's this: it is not too late to want something different in your life. It's okay to not care about the things you used to care about, right? You are not behind. You are not too old. It is not too late to pivot or to launch something new in your business or your life. You are evolving, and evolution doesn't always feel glamorous. Sometimes it feels like shedding. In every transition from season to season, there is shedding, there is leaving stuff behind, and sometimes it feels like questioning everything. But it is certainly not decline. And, this season is about expansion. So I want to leave you with this as we close this episode. Feel free to journal these questions. I will put them in the show notes so you have them. It's just 3 questions that I want you to think about. And feel free to DM me on Instagram at Fit Reporter. I would love to hear what your take on this topic is. Or you can comment here. If you're watching on YouTube, you can comment on YouTube, or you can connect with me on Instagram. So here are the questions. What no longer fits the woman you are today? What are you holding on to? And if you weren't worried about your age, what would you go after? Okay. So write those down, journal them, take some time for yourself and really think about this. Remember that midlife is not the beginning of the end. It is the beginning of living more intentionally, more honestly, more aligned. You, my friend, are not done. I am not done. You are stepping into a deeper, wiser, more powerful version of yourself. And this season, it might just be your best one yet. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you got some value out of today's episode. And if you really liked and enjoyed this episode, please share it. Please leave me a review. This really helps me to continue doing this and to share it with more people. I would really appreciate it. See you next time. Bye-bye. If you're in midlife and feel a little untethered, like the woman you used to be doesn't quite fit anymore, but the woman you're becoming isn't fully clear yet, I created something especially for you. It's called the Clarity Compass, and this is a simple but powerful tool to help you reconnect with who you are now, what you actually want in this season, and where you're being called next. Because midlife isn't about starting over, it's about realigning. You can download the Clarity Compass today. The link is in the show notes, and together we can start finding your direction today.